Hi guys, welcome to Protein Treats. I'm Melanie and I am here with a special guest today, Robin Murphy, who just had surgery. Tell us, when did you have surgery?
I had surgery 12 days ago.
12 days ago? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm down almost 40 pounds since I started my pre-op.
That's incredible. 40 pounds in 12 days. That's amazing. Today we're here and we're talking about clears. So we're going to be talking a little bit about clears before your surgery and clears after your surgery. We've got lots of really fun hacks. We've got lots of really fun tips to be able to get through your clears. I know everybody gets a little bit stressed. How were you feeling about clears when you were getting ready to start on them?
When I started clears, it was definitely a change for sure. And it's a little hard to get used to, and a lot of it is the mental side of, oh, I'm just drinking things. Well, I should be eating something. But definitely since surgery, it's been a lot easier.
Yeah, it's really a mental game because you feel like you're going without something. You feel like you're being deprived. And so that's why we want to put this together for everybody today, so you can see just how many really cool options there are and how many little tips and tricks there are so that you can do clears and you can feel like you're eating something real, you're chewing something, you're getting a little bit of variety, and it's not all just chicken broth. So does that sound good?
That sounds great.
All right, let's get started. So today we're going to be doing something a little different. Instead of just covering one recipe like we usually do, we're going to cover a whole lot of recipes and a whole lot of tips that are just about your pre-op and your post-op. And one of the neat tools that we have inside your patient account that you're going to find is Bitsy. And that's a recipe search engine. It's got all sorts of recipes for your clears, for your fulls, and even for later on. So if you had a chance to look around a little bit at Bitsy.
Yeah, I was looking at it a little bit on my pre-op, and I was really impressed. I really like that it breaks it down into sections about clear fluids or full fluids, and it really helps you as you go through. And I find it really helpful because I can go through and search for things that maybe my family would also eat, and we can kind of talk about it, or I could say to the kids, like, why don't you pick something off of Bitsy, and we'll make that and we'll all have it together.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And we're really excited about it because it has recipes not just from me and from Protein Treats, but has recipes from other bariatric patients that have had surgery. So it's a really great tool inside your account. The other new tool that you have is our new app for tracking. And that app is called Bariatric Support. And you can go and you can track your water, you can track what stage you're at, you can track your sleep. So that's another tool for you inside your patient account.
That's awesome. I would find that really helpful, especially being post-op, because I think like at least the first couple days, it's really hard to remember to drink your water because you're so limited in how much you can take. Whereas on your pre-op, if you got a little bit behind, you could make it up and chug a little bit, right? But after surgery, you really have to be on top of it.
Yeah, you really do. It's half a cup per half an hour. So when you have the app, it helps you to track that and makes it, just that much easier. So are you ready? Should we get started? Should we look at all the fun things you can have on clears?
Yeah, I'm really excited with all this stuff that's around here.
So one of the things that all of our patients do, whether they're on clears before surgery or they're on clears after surgery, is they're wondering why. Why am I on clears? Why do I even have to do this? And there's two different reasons. One is when you're preoperative, you have a very different reason why you're on clears. And the other is postoperative, after your surgery, then the reasons are also totally different. So before your surgery, the reason why you're on clears is to very rapidly reduce the amount of intra-abdominal fat. So the amount of fat that's on your stomach, that's on your liver, that's on your gallbladder, all of that fat that's in there, that visceral fat, we want to burn off. We want it gone. So we're going to have you on a diet that's really high in protein, and it's going to shrink your liver. It's going to use up all the glycogen stores on your liver, and your liver is actually going to reduce in size significantly. And that's really important for Dr. Pompa because she needs to have lots of room to be able to maneuver when she's doing your surgery. So when you burn off that fat, it gives her a better visual on being able to perform the surgery itself. And then the other thing that's really important when she's in the OR with your surgery is the size of your liver itself. Your liver's actually up on top, so she has to clamp it up out of the way. So you imagine if your liver's really, really big, right? Like a lot of bariatric patients before they have surgery, then it's hanging over the clamp and in the way, right? Well, just like anyone else, if you're doing surgery and you've got something that's in the way, it makes it much more difficult to perform the surgery. So when you shrink it, it becomes nice and firm. It's less likely for you to have complications. And it also gives you a much less painful recovery and a faster recovery. And the reason for that is when there's a lot of fat that's attached to your stomach or attached to your other organs, that fat has to be removed in surgery. So she actually has to cauterize it and remove that fat. And that means that you're going to have, if there's a lot of fat, it means you're going to have a longer recovery. If it's nice and clear and you've been able to burn off those fat reserves before your surgery, you're going to recover really nice and quickly because she hasn't had to remove any of that visceral fat. Your body's done it for you. So when you're thinking about pre-op, it's not just that we're making you drink all these clear liquids for no good reason. We're really doing it so that you have a really smooth recovery. And for you, I'm pretty curious, what was your recovery like? How was your pain level the day after your surgery?
The day after surgery, I had bouts of like a 5 or a 6, or at least the night of.
Yeah.
Or the night after.
Like a 5 or 6 out of 10 in terms of a pain level. 10. Yeah.
But the day after that, it was like a 3 or a 4, and maybe I might get a bit of gas pain that would bump it for a little bit, but it would come right back down.
And now you're 12 days after surgery. How do you feel today?
I feel great. I feel just like myself. This past week, I've been a little tired by times, but that's all part of the recovery. But other than that, I feel great.
And that's because you did such a good job on your pre-op. So when Dr. Pompa was doing your surgery, she was able to go in. You had burned off most of your visceral fat. It meant that your surgery went really nice and smoothly. She had a nice clear view when she was being able to do your sleeve. And that's why your recovery was so good. That's why you had that 5 out of 10 on a pain level on your next day. I'm really curious, what was the hardest part of doing your pre-op clears?
The hardest part for me for pre-op clears was finding a couple things that I really like. On my pre-op, I would drink the store-bought chicken broth, which is pretty gross. Just to try to get some salt or something savory and to use a spoon, because you really miss the whole actual feeding part when you're on clears. But post-op, I've been really interested in making my own broth and trying to find a healthier option as well as something that tastes a bit better.
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest. Now, a lot of our patients do the store-bought broth before their surgery and after their surgery. And it's really super easy to make your own bone broth. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to show you some hacks so that you're having an absolutely delicious broth before your surgery and after your surgery, plus having some variety with it. So you don't have to go to the store and come back with a whole bunch of bones, and it's not overwhelming. It's really super easy. It's as easy, in fact, as picking up one of these roasted chickens from the deli that are already done. You put it in your crock pot, cover it with some water, and then you're going to take all these fresh veggies. So you're going to take your celery, maybe a bit of kale if that's what you want, lots and lots of onion, lots of garlic, any kind of vegetables that you want. And you're going to cut them into pretty big chunks. Once you cut them into chunks, you're going to dump them right into your crock pot. Then you're going to close your crock pot up. You're going to turn it to medium level, and you're going to leave it on for 24 to 48 hours. It could not be easier. When you take your chicken out, the meat's going to fall right off the bones. You can reserve the chicken for your family, so you can have them, you can serve them with, whether it's like actual pieces of chicken or whether you want to make a soup for your family. You strain the leftover broth, put it in the freezer in little Ziploc bags and individual bits, and you're good to go. So you can make broth out of almost anything, whether it's beef bones and leftover steak from when you feed your family. You can use the bones from pork or pork chops. And of course, you can use it from turkey or from chicken. So then you have all sorts of varieties. And even if you're a vegetarian, guess what? You can do it without any meat.
Wow.
So it tastes unbelievably different from the store-bought stuff. So if you want to buy the store-bought stuff, go right ahead. But if you're getting sick of it and you're getting tired of it, go ahead and get all the yummy vegetables and put them in. The next thing that I would say is remember that especially on your pre-op, you're allowed to have unflavored protein. You're not allowed to have that after your surgery on your post-op. So when you're doing your broth, what you really want to do before your surgery is when you heat it up in the microwave and you reheat your leftover broth, put a few tablespoons of unflavored protein in it and then stir it up after you've already heated it and go ahead and drink it. Do not try and put protein in while you're making the broth or in a big pot on the stove because it will get yucky. But if you put it in right before you actually eat it, not only will it cool the broth down a little bit, but it's going to taste really good. So we've covered why you want to do the pre-op, why it's so important to be doing your clears. And we're going to cover in a little bit why the post-op is so important. But do you have any questions in the meantime about what we've covered so far?
Yeah, I have a question about the protein. So why is it that you can have the protein in your pre-op but not in your clears in your post-op?
That is such a good question because protein really is the most important macronutrient. Before you have your surgery, the more protein you have, the more muscle you're going to keep and the more fat you're going to burn. And we also know that protein is the one macronutrient that increases the feeling of fullness. So protein equals feeling full. So why on earth would we take that away from you after you have your surgery? And the answer is because protein is very dense, and when you mix it with liquids in your stomach, it can form a solid. It can actually start to solidify in the stomach. And normally that's a great thing. That's no problem. That increases satiety. It makes it longer for your digestive system to work the protein through. But right after surgery, that's not such a great idea because your incision, your staple line is still healing. So our goal after surgery is actually to have your stomach work as little as possible so that it can heal really quickly. And that means when you swallow anything and your digestive process starts, we want your stomach to have to work as little as possible. And we want that clear fluid to go down through your stomach, through your duodenum, and then all the way down through the rest of your digestive system with very quickly, with very little effort so that you stay hydrated and you feel really good, but your stomach is not having to work while it heals. And that's why we don't want you having protein.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, once you do start on protein when you go to fulls, and we're going to cover this in a different episode, then that's when you're going to introduce lots of protein again. And you're going to hear your coach saying to you, did you get your protein in? Did you get your protein in? But for right now on clears after your surgery, we don't want you having protein. So tell me on clears before and now you're doing clears again after your surgery, what's been one of the biggest challenges for you?
Definitely one of the biggest or the biggest challenge is you get bored of what you have. I'm really good to find something I like, but then I'll wear it out and then I'll be looking for something else again.
And one of the things that I hear a lot from patients is that they really wish they could choose something.
Yes, absolutely.
Just that feeling of being able to eat normal food even though you're on clears. So that's why I want to talk about some of the really cool hacks that we have today. And one of them is popsicles. So you take your clear fluid and you put it in. Now I use one of those Zuko makers, which I'll show you guys later. It only takes 3 minutes, to make. And you can make all different flavors. So each one of them can have a different flavor. And then you can go all day long if that's what you want. Do you want to try a little bit?
Sure.
There you go. Now, when you're doing clears, to be able to sit there and have a popsicle, you don't have to worry about drinking too fast. You're getting your fluids in at the perfect rate. If it's warm, you've got, especially in summertime when it's easy to get dehydrated, you've got a really nice little treat and you feel normal.
Yeah, it's great. And they taste great.
Yeah, they taste really good. And you can do all different variations. Some of the other variations that you can do is teas. Now, if you want a darker tea, like a chai tea, make sure that you're using a rooibos tea. It's caffeine free. Obviously, you've got your clears in here. Now, I like to do them in my Keurig machine, and I don't use the pods. I just take a tea bag or sometimes 2 tea bags, and I put it right in the little hole where the pod is supposed to be, pour my hot water over it, and I'm ready to go with a nice hot tea. You can have any kind of green tea. You can have any kind of flavored, as long as there's no sugar in it and as long as there's no caffeine in it, you're good to go for before and after your surgery. Another big tip that I like to do is you take your tea, your leftover tea, and then a whole bunch of ice, and you put it in your blender just like this. Pour your tea in, a little bit of lemon meal, and all of a sudden you've got a really nice, almost like a clear ice cap, like you were off at Starbucks, but you're just doing it in your own kitchen. Blend it up and off you go. And so you get that full flavor even though you're having a clear.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, infused waters are really, really big. It breaks up the boredom, and you can use anything. You can use your citrus fruits like we have here, or here we've even put cranberry and some frozen fruit. And so you take your frozen fruit out of the freezer, dump it right in with your water, and then off you go through the day. And as it melts, the flavor becomes a little more intense. And as you drink, you're getting something that's made out of real flavor. So it's a softer flavor than sometimes the sugar-free flavorings like the Mios or those sorts of things.
Yeah,
so that's
awesome.
a nice tip.
It's like having ice cubes too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're getting a difference in temperature. You can have your hot, you can have your cold, and you can get all sorts of different flavors. The other tip that I would get that I think is really cool is when you're leaving in the morning, if you do this the night before, you take your flavors and you mix it in with your water and you put it in a little Ziploc bag like this and you just toss it in your freezer. It will freeze. Then you take it like a giant ice cube and you put it inside your water bottle when you're heading out the door. So throughout the day, it keeps your water cold, but it also infuses it with whatever flavor you've put in your little frozen water.
That's awesome. So what are some examples of flavors that I can use?
Well, before your surgery, we don't want you having red dye. And that's because it makes it hard for Dr. Pompa when she's doing surgery along the staple line. It will actually dye, the red will dye your stomach. And so it might look like you're bleeding. So we don't want to do that. And that's why we always say no red before your surgery. Afterwards, you can go crazy and have like all the strawberry flavors you want. These are the kind of things that most of our patients love. You can get iced tea flavor. This one's tropical mango. This one's a peach, and you can put them in. This one, I believe, is a coconut and pineapple. So you can get all sorts of different flavors. One thing I will tell you, though, is especially after your surgery, and you've probably noticed this.
Everything is super sweet.
Everything is super sweet. And everything tastes really powerful. Have you noticed?
Yeah. It's a huge difference between pre-op and post-op.
Mm-hmm. So before, you're probably going to want to put a ton of flavor in your clears and in your water because it helps you to feel like you're having something different. After, you want to be pretty careful that you're just doing one tiny drop for the amount you're putting in because you'll find the flavor very intense. So some of the other things you can do when you're doing your teas is let them steep. So if you make your one cup, whether you do it in the microwave or you do it in your Keurig, then you can go ahead and put it into a big jug, add a bunch of water and put it in the fridge. And then that way you're going to have nice chilled iced tea for whenever you want later on. The last thing that I want to show you, so one of the other little hacks, and this is going to be your friend both before surgery and after surgery, is Jell-O. Sugar-free Jell-O. Make sure you're getting the sugar-free stuff. It comes in all sorts of different flavors from peach to lemon to lime. And not only can you make traditional Jell-O the way you normally would, but you can actually put it right in with your iced tea, for example. You can put it in the popsicles that we made, and it gives the popsicles a more dense, almost a chewy, heavier feeling to it, texture to it.
Sure.
So you feel like you're getting that bite of something even though you're really on clears.
Wow, that's a great tip.
Jell-O.
I didn't think of putting it in anything other than making normal Jell-O.
Yeah, you can use it for all sorts of different things. So we've kind of covered a few things. I want to show you a couple of other little hacks that a lot of our patients use, and that's the flavored syrups. So there's all sorts of different brands. These brands, I believe, are Da Vinci, but there's Torani, and I believe even Starbucks has different sugar-free ones. You're going to use those a lot anyway, even when you're further out on your post-op. I'm 6 years out, and I use them almost on a daily basis. And you can get chai tea flavor, you can get fruit flavors, you can get all sorts of different flavors and add them to your clear liquids. And you can obviously add them to popsicles, you can add them to your ice drinks. So, have you tried any of those yet?
I've tried a couple on my pre-op, but they're great. Like, you would think it's Mio or anything like that. It works exactly the same way.
And it gives you that sense, like you're not having to have the same thing over again, like chicken broth again, chicken and broth again. You can have pineapple 1 minute, and then the next minute you can have like a apple cinnamon flavor.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because you get so bored so fast, and that's when your head really starts to think like, oh, I wish I could do this instead. But if you keep it busy, it's definitely not as bad.
Exactly. Like if you're sitting there and you're kind of thinking, boy, I wish I could have a piece of apple pie right now, have some apple cinnamon flavor in your tea and you're good to go. You have exactly the same tastes inside. So the last thing that I kind of want to cover is if you're really on the go, you don't have time, you don't want to make all of this, or you forgot to, you can actually pick up things at the store. And you were showing me this. I didn't even know these existed. And they're flavored water.
Flavored water.
But they're not carbonated. I did not even know these exist. So when you're at the grocery store, if you keep your eye out, you can actually find pre-flavored that are sugar-free and they're not carbonated. And that's perfect for both your pre-op and your post-op. And you can pick that up at any convenience store or grocery store, really. So perfect when you're traveling. Last thing I want to ask you is, have you had a little bit of trouble after surgery with figuring out how big to gulp or your sips or how often to sip? How has that changed from clears before and clears after?
It's definitely a change. I know the first couple days I was taking like the smallest sips I possibly could. But as I'm kind of trying to find the line of what's good and what's not. I've definitely taken like 2 big gulps and got some burps or whatever, but you just find your balance eventually. But it's definitely different than pre-op.
What's the biggest thing that you found? Like, have you noticed a difference in your hunger levels from before to after?
Oh, it's night and day. Before surgery, you're anxious, you're going, and a lot of people, especially who struggle with food, it's a mental thing. So when you're stressed, you would normally want to eat something. So you definitely, I think the battle is definitely different. Whereas after surgery, it's more like, okay, well, I had surgery and I need to take care of myself, and it's easier because 1, you're not as hungry, and 2, it's just like you're waiting to get to the next stage.
Yeah, and it goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's going by really fast.
Like you're 12 days out already, so you're going to be heading on to your full fluids pretty soon.
Yeah.
Do you feel super excited for fulls, or are you doing okay on your clears right now?
I'm doing okay on my clears. I'm looking forward to my fulls, but I'm nervous about them because it's a new thing. But I think once I get there, it'll be great.
And how's your coach been? Has it been easier for you to go through this process, having someone that you can call and talk to anytime and ask all these kind of questions?
I can't imagine not having a coach. On site and at home. I think it's so important to have somebody to talk to, and especially someone to talk to who's been through the experience. There's times when it's hard, like the first time you don't get to sit down with your family to eat dinner, or the times where you're like, I'm in a grocery store and I don't know which yogurt is good, or whatever the question may be. Like, to have that support, I think it's its own weight in gold.
I agree. And I think all the new tools too, like having Bitsy and the app to go through. And of course, when you go on Bitsy, everything we've talked about today is going to be on there for you. And then having the app to be able to track and do your follow-up and stay in touch with your coach and call her whenever you need to. So
Yeah, it's like the perfect little package. And I know too that Bitsy is great. It's great because your coach will give you some tips and they'll tell you recipes and stuff, but sometimes you get so much information, you just don't retain it all. So to be able to go to Bitsy and be like, oh, this is what she was talking about, and I don't need to remember right away. It's always there for me to go back to.
Just put it on your tablet or have it on your phone. You're good to go. Okay, so we've covered lots of really fun stuff today, lots of little hacks for your clears. And I'm going to give you one of my favorite tips for today. And that is when you're feeling a little bit bored or you're feeling like you can't do this anymore, put it in a super fancy glass so you feel really special. And cheers. Congratulations on your surgery.
Thank you.
Let's have a little sip. How good is that?
So good.
And the biggest thing is it's a mental game. It's mentally being prepared for it, being able to stay in touch with your coach, knowing that you have the support you need, knowing what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. And it really makes the process so much easier.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, we're going to see you on the next episode where we're going to talk about fulls. We can't wait to show you coming up soft foods. So make sure you watch all the videos and stay in touch with your coach. If you have any questions at all, call us anytime. Thanks, guys.